Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition, another episode of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel St. Patrick Hewitt. And yes, the background has changed. There's a teddy bear to my right. there's bedroom items to my left. I've had to move the studio. My dad has taken over the physical studio room and told me to go record this episode in my bedroom. But here it is. Your parents are always going to be your parents. But ladies and gents, hot off the heels of the previous episode where we spoke to Shanak Sarkar about associate cricket and what the rise of associate cricket in the context of West Indies cricket, I've got another special episode today, and this one is, well, I'd say even more exciting. And let me give the context for this one. So about a month and a half ago, I went to, for those of you who are Londoners or know London, I went to Rich Mix, which is, let's say, East London, around Shoreditch, Liverpool Street, etc. And I went to watch a film called 501 Not Out. And when we talk about the number 501, for any keen cricket aficionado, you should immediately know who that is going to be about and what particular cricketer that's going to be about. And it is, of course, the great Brian Charles Lara. And I think one of the biggest kind of debating points you have in cricket is who's the greatest batter of all time. And particularly within the Caribbean region and for fans of West Indies cricket, if you have a conversation about who's the greatest West Indian batter of all time, you probably, every other person, if not every person, Lara's name is in the conversation, if not number one. And then if we even consider it in terms of the greatest batter of all time in general, Lara's name is in the conversation, if not number one. And for anybody who had the pleasure of watching Brian Lara play both domestic cricket around the world and international cricket for the West Indies, if you had that pleasure, then the word is what it says. It was a pleasure. I myself remember one iconic innings that Brian Lara played at Sabina Park in, I always get the dates wrong, I believe it was 1999, home series versus, might be 98 actually, home series versus Australia, and he hit 213. At Sabina Park. And at the time, I had never live in terms of my actual eyes in a ground, seen someone as talented as Brian Lara. And that's just one of his innings. That's just one. Never mind the actual iconic 375, the iconic 400, the iconic 501. So that all notwithstanding, and that intro notwithstanding, when I went to watch the film 501 Not Out, I had been in kind of build-up conversation prior to going to the venue with the director, a gentleman by the name of Sam Lockyer. I say director. He technically also the star of the film as well. I mean, he plays a minor role in the context in terms of Brian Lara, but he's technically the star of the film as well. And Sam and I had been in conversation about myself and Santoki coming to watch 501 Not Out, and I was able to get the time to kind of head across to the cinema to go and watch it. And before I get Sam on the show, I want to say now, and I'll say it throughout the forthcoming conversation with Sam, try and get along to watch this. If it's available to rent anywhere, if it's available to stream anywhere, when those options come out, please watch this film. It is an absolute must, not only for people who were alive at the time when Brian hit the 501, the 400, etc., but people who have heard about the kind of folklore of Brian Lara since he retired. It's still essential to watch. If you truly want to understand what made Brian Lara the person he was from a young youth to even Brian Lara now, as well, I don't know how old he is now, 51, I think he might be, to Brian Lara now. This film is absolutely essential to kind of weaving the fabric together of understanding Brian Lara's impact on the game. You know what? I hope Sam's happy with that intro, you know. But without any further ado, let me bring Sam Lockyer onto the show. Sam, how you doing?
Hey, Machel. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Do you know what, Sam? I never tell. I always say to the guests, "I'll do a bit of an intro," and then it goes on for quite a while. But if we jump straight into it, I've tried to tell people who you are in the context of this 501 Not Out film. But let me hand the floor over to you, actually. For anybody who's not familiar with your work, for anyone who's not familiar with the film, who is Sam Lockyer and what is 501 Not Out?
Hey, Matt. Great to see you today. So my name's Sam Lockyer. I'm a director based in Birmingham. And 501 Not Out is a feature-length documentary all about the legend that is Brian Lara. And obviously majoring on the 501 innings and his, I guess, that kind of 6-month period 6-week period, I should say, where he was obviously an established Test cricketer. He scored the 375, broke Sir Garfield Sober's world record. And then in that 6 weeks period, kind of went from that, did the 501, and he kind of went overnight global sensation, absolute superstar of the game. It kind of tells that story.
Naturally, for people. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, it's the camera. It doesn't. It looks a little bit.
No, you're fine. Don't worry about it. It's all good, man.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
So naturally, for people who will be watching this on the visuals and not listening on the audios, because we have a different audience for visuals and audios, generally speaking, they will say, "Okay, Sam, cool. You made this film," but then the obvious first question is, what made you want to make it?
Yeah, so for me, Brian was my childhood hero growing up in Essex in the mid-90s. My dad used to take me to matches at Chelmsford. Back in the day, this was obviously, there'd be touring games, so the West Indies would come and tour. We'd play Essex at Chelmsford. Australia would come, we'd go and see Australia play Essex. And I remember queuing up for Brian's autograph at the Boundary's Edge at Chelmsford in the summer of 95. That was when the Windies came over. So yeah, I was just kind of in awe of him and everything that he'd achieved in that period.
I hope you understand this question, but so I too and several millions others would have been in awe of Brian Lara in his early pomp around 95 and 94, 95. Even to now, if people met Brian Lara, I think they'd struggle to know what to say to him just out of sheer awe of meeting Brian Lara. But how do you it sounds such a silly question, but you have to understand this from like the layperson who has no experience of these things. How do you go from an idea about, I want to make a film? So talk us through the process. I want to make a film or a documentary about Brian Lara. I guess weave the story together. How did you go from the initial inception of, this is an idea that I've got, to, and I don't mean making it, but this is an idea I've got, to, yeah, let me fly out to Trinidad, go start speaking to some people. How did you weave that kind of initial inception together?
Yeah, great question. So it was about a 4 or 5 year period. I first had the idea to make the film back in 2015, 2016, around that time. And I was kind of looking ahead to 2019 because that was the 25th anniversary of the 501 and the 375 and the Cricket World Cup in England, and there's loads going on. So I kind of earmarked that 2019 year to kind of make the film and get it out there. And it was Brian's 50th birthday as well, back in May 2019 as well. So yeah, the kind of stars aligned, as it were. And yeah, it was a case of, how can we get this film up and running, So we actually we launched a crowdfunding campaign, and we had fans from all around the world, fans of Brian, backing that crowdfunding campaign. We had one gentleman that put in £501, which I thought was a really nice touch. And more than that, he was from Trinidad. He was a Trini person, and he helped us with loads of contacts for accommodation and contacts in terms of contributors. So people like Nikki Board and Dr. Nigel Camacho, who are the co-founders of the Trinity Posse Group, close friends of Brian Lara as well. So we couldn't have, the whole Trinidad trip couldn't have happened without, we had 2 or 3 people that were really pivotal in helping us. You know, firstly with the crowdfunding, and then secondly, actually the logistics and the access that we kind of needed to go to Trinidad and meet all these great friends of Brian and people at the Queen's Park Oval Cricket Club as well. And when we got out there, everyone was so up for talking to us. You know, it was myself and my colleague James, who was my cameraman, and 2 pasty white men in the middle of you know, early May, end of April, early May, in Trinidad, boiling hot, 35-degree heat. We thought the cameras were going to melt, but yeah, everyone, you know, had open arms, and you know, everyone wanted to talk to us basically, because obviously Brian is this absolute legend. You know, the Prince of Port of Spain. So yeah, it was the trip of a lifetime. I think we were out there for like 8 or 9 days, and I don't want to give away too much, because obviously I want people to see the film. But yeah, there were some pretty exciting moments that happened while we were out there.
When you kind of, okay, so you start the crowdfunding campaign and it looks like, you know what, we can pull this off. We're going to be able to go out to Trinidad. We're going to be able to speak to kind of key individuals around Brian, all the kind of people who saw him as a youngster up until the present day, etc., etc. Was there because it's not, again, obviously I've had the pleasure of seeing the film. It's not like there's a script per se, because it's a documentary, but did you have the outline of this is what I want it to look like? Or was it more of a freestyle in so much as let's see where these conversations take us, because we don't know what people are going to say. We don't know who we might get a new contact with as a result of conversations, etc.
Yeah, another great question. I would say it was a bit of both. I had a vision for the film, the story I wanted to tell, you know, and it was a case of taking audiences back to that moment in June the 6th of 1994. I've got the T-shirt on, by the way, yeah, it was a case of accessing archive footage that had never been seen before, archive photographs, and obviously interviewing some big names. You know, we've got Curtly Ambrose, Alan Donald, Ian Bell, so the Trinity Posse Group founders, Jonathan Agnew, some real big names from the world of cricket in the film. And obviously I did my research, so I had an outline of, you know, I wanted to take, the thing for me was I wanted to, you know, find out where did it all begin. And obviously for Brian, it began, you know, in Trinidad. So that's why I wanted to go out there to Trinidad. So that was part of it. He's tracing his development, his early development at Queen's Park Cricket Club. You know, his rise into the West Indies team. And then it was all about, you know, him being signed for Warwickshire, you know, the 375, and then getting signed for Warwickshire and stuff. And then the film kind of just goes on and kind of tells the story of that 1994 season. So I had a vision, if you like, for the film and the narrative that I wanted to tell. But obviously with documentary make, you know, as you say, it's not necessarily scripted. So you don't know, you know, a few interviewees people came up that we didn't necessarily had heard of before. And we're like, right, we're going to speak to that person. That's really, really great. That's got to go in there, kind of thing. And another thing was a fan. Obviously, being a fan myself, I wanted to track down fans that appreciated that moment. There's 2 schoolboys that were part of the pitch invasion when Brian, you know, broke the 501 at Edgbaston, and I'd seen that iconic image of them in the pitch invasion. I was like, I've got to track these 2 schoolboys down, you know, because they're probably about my age now. So I was quite interested in that, in telling their story. So that was a part of it. And I think in a lot of these feature documentaries on these big superstars, sporting superstars, you don't often have the fans' perspective. Yeah. So that was a critical thing for me as a filmmaker. I wanted to kind of get that across in the film as well.
Yeah, and I thought that was, I mean, like, I'm going to keep saying it, like, the film's so good, but I thought that was a really nice touch to get the fans' perspective on, just because it's almost like I don't know how. I don't know if this makes sense, but again, for me, I'll give the kind of answer from my perspective. When they came on the screen, I felt it was like me on the screen, if that makes sense. In so much as the fans' genuine perspective of this is what it felt like as just they were like school kids. They would have been like 13, 14, 15, or whatever it was at the time, and that kind of resonated to how it would have felt for someone like myself who would have been young at that time, that around that age at that time as well, trying to take in what Lara had achieved. And I think, again, not trying to give, deliberately not trying to give away a lot from from the film itself. One of the things that really hit as well in the film was when I think that's when Jonathan Agnew is actually on the screen, and you make the reference to Brian Lara cricket. And it's weird, Sam, because when that part of the film happened, I remember being sitting in my seat going, "Oh yeah," and it's weird because, of course, Brian Lara cricket, but you grow up, or people like yourself and myself grew up playing Brian Lara cricket without probably understanding what he'd actually done. And it's only when Agnew comes on the screen and it brings up the kind of context of Brian Lara cricket that you realize this guy was a proper bona fide global superstar. And it sounds silly. It sounds silly to say. Of course, like now we look back and go, yeah, of course he was. But at the time, I think it was hard to appreciate or understand the wider kind of context of what he was actually, or the impact he was having on the world game. And I'm just, I guess the question out of that is, was that something you kind of picked up as well in terms of piecing everything together? Even you as a fan at the time, but you're now filming in retrospect. Did you even yourself pick up on, wow, this guy's impact was even greater than I even realized?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think when I met the photographer, Graham, I can't remember his surname, but he mentions that Barack Obama mentioned that Brian was the Michael Jordan of cricket. Graham Morris is a photographer who's travelled all around the world, taking photographs of the England team, the West Indies team, amazing photographs, stunning photographs. And yeah, Graham said, "Oh yeah, Brian was essentially, Barack Obama said, Brian was the Michael Jordan of cricket." And when I heard that, I was like, wow, that hits home. That Barack Obama, the US president, one of the most famous people in the world, if he's saying that about Brian is a big deal. And obviously Michael Jordan was a massive deal. So yeah, like the second half of the film, like touches on the legacy, Brian's legacy and his impact around the world. And as a fan, as a cricket fan, growing up, studied in Birmingham, and that's where 20 odd years ago when I'd go to Edgbaston to watch Warwickshire play, and that kind of love of Warwickshire kind of emerged then, and would see the iconic photographs of the 501 and think, one day I've got to make a film about this, but that whole legacy, was exemplified in that video game. And I played that video game with my mates in student digs, on the Xbox. I think we had Brian Lara 2007 or something like that. And you could literally, smash fours, smash sixes everywhere, or clean, bowl people out for 20 and things like that. Bowl your mates team out for 20 odd and have a bit of banter and stuff. And it's just a great video game first and foremost. Playability wise, it's great fun, and obviously had its quirkiness with the didn't have the licenses to the real names, so it had kind of like funny names, and then obviously the commentary with Aggers was quite quirky and had a few bugs in it and things like that. So yeah, but obviously it was the number one selling game in the UK gaming charts, so again it shows that Brian transcended the sport. And I always thought this, that there would have been people that would have played the video game that wouldn't necessarily have played cricket or even heard of Brian prior to, they might have gone to their local HMV or R Price if it was back in the 90s, and gone to Game and bought the Brian Lara cricket video game, and played it, and then discovered him through that. then became a fan of Brian Lara, a fan of cricket potentially. So yeah, I don't think you can underestimate. You know, there was, I think Shane Warne. There was a Shane Warne video game, I'm pretty sure, as well. So, and I think Freddie Flintoff has appeared on video games and things like that since. So these are the kind of like top superstars of the game. But it wasn't just, obviously it wasn't just a video game. You know, he had jeans sponsorship deals.
Yes, yeah.
That was with a company called Joe Blogs. He sadly didn't. He missed out on the Levi 501 deal, which would have been awesome. But I think the Joe Blogs deal worked out pretty well for him anyway. But you know, he was a good looking guy, Brian. You know, let's not beat around the bush. You know, good looking guy, top of his game, and yeah, at that time he was one of the first cricketers to have, you know, all this kind of attention and these kind of sponsorship marketing deals and stuff. And if you fast forward to now, it probably, a lot of these guys in the IPL are getting this kind of attention now, but he was one of the first back in the mid 90s. And I think the guys in, you know, playing the game now have a lot to be grateful to Brian for, really.
The other thing that kind of ties in with that again comes across really well in the film, and again is something I think I took for granted, maybe because I was younger, but I think possibly the world of cricket took for granted. And I think the archive footage that you get really brings it home, is actually how young Brian was at the time. Mm-hmm. And it kind of just brought some of that archive footage that you got, and I just talk to me about sourcing the archive footage, but some of that footage that you got, like when I think there's one line in it where like Brian was only 24 at the time, and you've got like all of the, I think Warwickshire had to rent out some space that they'd never, because there were so many cameras around him. The footage of the cameras at what must have been Heathrow or Gatwick Airport when he makes the 501, all the cameras surrounding him. And I think the following day after the 501, you've got footage of him being all the papers surround him in London. He's wearing that bowler hat or something, and then he goes to the Oval to then play, and he hits a 70 odd after. Like, all of that footage is insane, Sam. How did you go about sourcing and getting all those archives, etc.?
Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest undertakings in the film, in making the film, was sourcing the archive. And it's just painstaking research, you know, and we had a number of big players that have been supportive of us, you know, tracking down that archive. So ITV were really, really helpful. Actually gave us access to archive for Central News footage. So that was great. And we trawled through their archive. The BBC, a lot of the BBC footage. There's just masses. There's masses, and there's also fan footage that we wanted to, you know, there's some fans that actually make it to the stadium and take their video camera down, and that footage had never been seen before, you know. So it's things like that as well. It's tracking down, you know, fan footage. There's loads of stills as well in there, and some of which, you know, iconic photographs of Brian growing up in Trinidad. So yeah, it was just a case of far and wide, you know, reach, and just doing a ton of research, and then hoping that the big players would be supportive of what we were doing, and help us with the access.
I should point out as well, and I didn't say this at the top of the show, so my apologies for those who didn't know. The filming or the screening that I went to see was part of the Windrush Film Festival, which was throughout June in England. And the reason why I make reference to that, Sam, is because, of course, like you said, the film originally came out in 2019. And some people listening to this, whether those based in the Caribbean or our diaspora audience, I'm fairly certain that those listening to this episode will be like, I've got to go see this. I've got to go catch this. But would it be fair to say that when you released it, the pandemic had a massive kind of impact on getting it out there? Because I think you released it just, maybe 6 months before the world shut down, maybe give or take more. So what impact has that had on, I guess, trying to get it really out there for the wider cricket public to embrace?
Yeah, definitely. We had a UK cinema deal, like a deal. We were going to get it out there in Picture House cinemas. You know, we were in talks with Picture House anyway. You know, they were really keen to get it out there in UK cinemas. And yeah, obviously the pandemic hit, and then all the cinemas shut. And it was like, gosh, wow, okay, that's not ideal. And we got selected for the film to open the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival, which is the biggest film festival in the English-speaking Caribbean. So that was a huge deal. And again, I couldn't fly. The festival was done virtually because of COVID, because all the flights were grounded. So I didn't get the opportunity to go out there to Trinidad for that. But still, the film got screened virtually, and you know, people around the world could watch it and enjoyed it. You know, which was great. But yeah, that was tough. That was a tough. The timing wasn't ideal. But on the positive side, we've kind of had a bit of a second coming.
Yes.
This year, like you said, with the Windrush Caribbean Film Festival, that was huge. That was a huge deal to screen at Shoreditch, our London premiere, and the great man came along, which was awesome, absolutely awesome to see him there, and yeah, sitting next to him, watching him watch a film that I'd made about him, my hero. It was unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable, and thankfully he enjoyed it, which was good. And quite a few of his friends came along, and Daniel Bell Drummond, you know, great cricketer at Kent. I think literally a few days later he scored 300.
Yeah, I was wondering if you'd noticed that as well.
Yeah, which is mad.
And actually, if I just come in there, Sam, do you know what was so interesting to me? And I hope Daniel doesn't mind me saying this. Daniel has, of course, been on the Caribbean Cricket Podcast as well. And so was it? It was after. Sorry, so it was after the film had finished, and Brian had done the excellent Q&A with yourself and Gladstone Small, etc. And so Daniel Bell Drummond had some stuff that he wanted Brian to sign, I think. I swear that's what he had in his hand. So I'm speaking to Daniel, and as God is my witness, Daniel was as excited as me to meet Brian Lara. And that kind of really hit home for me, that I was looking at Daniel Bell Drummond thinking, yeah, but you're a really good professional cricketer in your own right. And you're looking at Brian Lara like, oh my God, this is Brian Lara. Like, I got to go get him to sign this. I got to go talk to him about this. And as you say, Sam, literally 2-3 days later, he goes, hits 300. And I was thinking the same as you, which is, yeah, you got the anointing from BCL. You got to go hit that 300. But it really hit home for me, as you say, when Brian turned up at the screening, just how it's the aura. That's the only way to describe it. There is an aura about Brian Lara. Some people are asking questions on the verge of tears talking to Brian Lara. So I thought that was really interesting in the context of watching the film as well. And even now, to the present day, you have people looking at the film and then Brian now, and just the kind of general impact. Looking forward, let's get some of these. We've got to plug it for sure. Next month, at the time of recording, in about 13 days time, 12 days time, there is I say we like I'm in it. So there is a screening of 501. Do you want to just talk about that?
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Yeah. So we've got a screening at the Electric Cinema in Birmingham on Saturday, the 12th of August at 2:00. It's the oldest working cinema in the UK, beautiful Art Deco building. And I've always wanted to screen the film there. So when they kind of agreed to it, I was like absolutely buzzing, because they have some really massive films. They've just shown Oppenheimer and Barbie. So they show all the big mainstream stuff, but also show independent films as well. And they support independent filmmakers like myself. So I actually had a series of short films for the Commonwealth Games on artistic gymnastics and contemporary jazz that screened last year, featuring Joe Fraser, who you might have heard of. So that was a real buzz. But to have for 501 Not Out to be screening there at the Electric, that's just an absolute dream come true for me. They've got these lovely sofas. You can order your snacks and they'll bring them up to you from the bar and stuff like that. So it's a really, really cool venue. And we're doing a Q&A. We've got Archie Kalanya, who's the diversity cricket producer for BBC Sport. She's very kindly offered to host the Q&A. And we've also got George Dobell from the Cricketer coming along as well for the Q&A. So it'll be myself, George, and Archie on the panel. We'll be open to any questions from the audience afterwards as well. And yeah, it'll just be a really fun afternoon celebrating the genius of Brian Lara. So hopefully people in Birmingham, in the Midlands, can come, but I'm hoping as well, because it's a Saturday afternoon, it's a matinee, people might be able to potentially travel from a bit further afield as well. Come and spend the afternoon with us in Brum, you know. It's going to be awesome to see the film on the big screen. So yeah, Saturday 12th of August.
Listen, people, I can't add any more than Sam has said, other than to say, first and foremost, and I know we've got quite a lot of you, so first and foremost, the Brum diaspora, or just Brum cricket fans in general, please get along to that if you haven't had a chance to see the film yet. Those of you who are not necessarily in Brum, but maybe you've got family in Brum and you're from elsewhere, make up an excuse to go see them, but actually go watch 501 Not Out instead. And those of you who are on the outskirts of Brum, get along to go see it. But Sam, I know what the obvious question is that people ask me, or ask you. They'll say, but how do I see it other than that? Are there future plans? Because like you say, I'm glad you used that phrase, second coming of the film. And I'm surely, Sam, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, well, next year is 30 years since it happened. So surely you're thinking that as well in the back of your mind. So have you got any plans for wider releases for, I'm sure you might not be able to give them all away, but like streaming, this, that, and the other? Is there, obviously people can go to your website, please plug that in a second, but have you got any further plans as well?
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Yeah, so the website is 501notout.com. We're on Twitter at 501notout, and also Facebook 501notout, and that's kind of Facebook and Twitter is where we kind of update interested people on in terms of the release for the film and other stuff. So great if people can follow us on there. We're on Instagram as well, Iconic Productions UK. So that's my company, Iconic Productions. We're RTS award nominated company based in Birmingham. But in terms of the 30th anniversary, that's massive next year. Not only that, the 2020, I think it's the 2020 Cricket World Cups in the Caribbean and USA as well. So that's going to be that's going to be a big deal. 30th anniversary of the 501, 30th anniversary of the 375, and I think I'm right in saying 20th anniversary of the Brian's 400 as well. Brian very kindly gave me, this is one of his special caps for limited edition 400 Not Out caps. But yeah, we'd love to get the film out there on a much bigger scale, and I'm pleased to say we now have a distributor, Central City Media they're called. They're actually part of Rebellion, which is a video game company, but also has Rebellion Film Studios as well. So they're making feature-length films, and they have a film distribution arm. So we've got Central City Media on board now, and they're keen to get the film out there worldwide, you know, on TV, in cinemas, to streamers, on in airlines, everything, the whole lot. So that's really, really exciting. But there's quite a lot of work that needs to go on behind the scenes, particularly with licensing of the archive footage that we spoke about, because there's so much archive in there. That all needs to be, the way it's done is you pay for it incrementally based on, if it's just going to be at, in festivals, or it's just going to be in cinemas, or it's going to be on a streamer, or it's going to be on TV. There's the deals kind of, the costs go up and up and up, basically, depending on, which territories as well you're looking at. So it's a massive load of work to get those rights cleared. But that's all, it's chicken and egg, because that's dependent on whether we've got, the interest there from a broadcaster or a streamer or an airline or whatever. And what I can say is we are in early stage discussions with a couple of major players in terms of broadcasters. So yeah, keep your fingers crossed for us, because I think next year we could have a massive splash with this film.
Yeah, and good, basically, is my sole conclusion on that, because this is one of those independent films that I think it's of course you're going to agree with me, Sam, because you're the director, but this is one of those independent films that once it gets that kind of, what do I want to say here? Once it gets that kind of attention in the right place at the right time, I think a rocket is basically going to be attached, because 501 is so iconic and Brian Lara's name is so iconic that, do you know what I mean? It's naturally just one of those films that when somebody is scrolling and they see it, they're like, yeah, I'll have a bit of that. Do you see what I mean? And again, I echo people. I don't know what I expected when I sat down to watch it last month, but it superseded whatever I was expecting. Put it this way, and actually, this is maybe the last question I'm going to ask you, Sam. When it finished, I felt it could have gone on for another hour. I felt like Sam had left some stuff in the lockers, or back in the editing locker, where I was like, I wonder what would I wonder if Sam could have mentioned this, or could he have mentioned that? But I think, what's the runtime, Sam? Is it what?
It's 1 hour 47. Yeah.
Right. So 1 hour 40.
Yeah.
1 hour 47.
Fairly substantial. Yeah.
Yeah. And even then, I still felt like if you'd kept me in there for another hour, I don't think anyone would have complained, because of just how rich the content is that you've got there, right? But was there, I don't know if you can say, but was there anything that you left in the editing booth that in hindsight you look back and go, oh, we could have included that, or maybe we should have included that, or and again, you're a director, you're going to say it's exactly what you wanted. was there some stuff that, like, say you got like a Netflix deal, would there be enough footage that you've got that you could say extended cut, for example?
Yeah, 100%. There's like hours and hours on the cutting room floor, and that's the case. Obviously, in the case of any film, you know, there's loads of stuff that doesn't get go into the final edit and stuff. So yeah, there's a ton of footage. There was a lot on Warwickshire on the treble winning season, which some of it has obviously gone in, but a lot of it didn't, because we ended up with such a rich tapestry of people, great people wanting to talk about Brian and his legacy. So yeah, I probably got enough there to make a film about the Warwickshire treble winning season, which would be pretty cool. There's a bit more from Alan Donald. There's more from pretty much everyone. Ian Bell, I got an amazing interview with Ian Bell, and probably only a fraction of that has gone into the edit. But there's a lot in there, because Ian was, he was growing up. He was a youngster on the books at Warwickshire at the time, and he actually had a book that was signed. He got Brian to sign a book. He saw him in the car park kind of thing. Got him to sign this book for him. So I know Brian was had a big influence on Ian, and he went on to become this iconic, amazing five-time Ashes winner with England. So with the beautiful aesthetics of a cover drive. So yeah, there's a lot of interview bits with Ian that didn't make it in, but again, would love to make a film about Ian Bell one day. There's so much potential. There's so much potential there.
Yeah, that thing you said about maybe even looking at Warwickshire, because I thought some of the content you got from Dermot Reeve was absolute gold. And obviously Dermot Reeve is Dermot Reeve, and then those who know Dermot Reeve, the character, it's no surprise that it's content gold. But even with him, I was like, I feel like Sam could have spoken to Dermot Reeve for about 2 hours and got so much out of him.
Do you know what we actually did, Mac? You hit the nail right on the head. Dermot invited us to his home, and we got amazing amount of time. It was a good couple of hours with Dermot, and he did do some brilliant impressions. He did do the Imran Khan impression, which was really, really funny. Needless to say, I think he might have done Jeff Boycott and a couple of others. Needless to say, that didn't make it into the edit, but me and the film crew, we were wetting ourselves when we met Dermot. He was great fun, and yeah, he's a real character. And there's a lot of characters. I mean, Gladstone, obviously, massively grateful to Gladstone for appearing on the Q&A panel in London. He's a real character, and he's really funny in the film as well. And Aggers has his moments, bless him. When we filmed Aggers, Tino, the dog, was literally resting on the floor underneath the frame, underneath where we cut the camera. He was, Tino was just literally on the floor there. So yeah, some great moments. And Curtly Ambrose, I mean, when I got to interview him, he was I think the first person I actually interviewed for the film was Sir Kirtley. You know, that was incredible, and I should definitely say a big thank you to Warwickshire County Cricket Club, who did help us in those early stages. You know, with helping us with the with getting the word out there to their members and their fans about the crowdfunding campaign. The fact that we just building awareness that we were making this film, and through Warwickshire coming on board, that opened a lot of doors for us in terms of getting to some of these big names in the world of cricket. So I should say, huge thank you to Warwickshire. A huge thank you to Marston's Brewery as well, who were our official headline sponsor. Obviously, they're the beer sponsor for Warwickshire. You've probably seen the Eric Hollies. Has been many years, has been branded from Marston's Brewery. So again, without their support, we couldn't have made the film. And then obviously our crowdfunders from all around the world who chipped in. And my family, like my wonderful family, who and friends, couldn't have made it without their support. And obviously the team wasn't just me. I may take some of the credit for it, but as I directed and produced the film, but we had a great team. Brandon, who was our American editor, who didn't know anything about cricket before he worked with me on the film. So it was great to bounce off him, me as a big cricket fan and him not as a cricket fan. He had that different perspective. So it was great working with Brandon, and Brandon edited it. And then my colleague James, who came out to Trinidad with me, did a fantastic job. There's another chap, Tom Martin, who was a director of photography in the UK, shot some stunning sequences in the film. I could go on. I had in terms of the archive, there's a guy called Stan Illich, who helped us out with accessing a lot of the archive. So I probably miss people out. It's the thing, if I name drop too many, I'm going to miss people out. But it was a real team effort.
So just finally, because again, I think this is worth telling people. So Brian came to the Q&A last month for the screening at Rich Mix, and I remember you telling me I think it was, maybe, I don't know, it might be in the emails before the day itself, that or maybe it was on the day, that you said Brian had seen like kind of like an on the phone type version of the film. But how did that come about in terms of getting Brian? Because Brian's a busy man. how I feel like Brian's flying somewhere every day of his life. So just for the people who are going to watch this and are interested in this, I think it's quite fun or quite interesting, the story of how Brian essentially ended up turning up to the Q&A, and because that's I mean, it's the biggest endorsement you can get. Yeah, I'm going to come and watch this film in London. I need to be there. So just tell people how that one came about.
Yeah. So Brian, one of Brian's good friends, Lawrence, I think he lives in Shoreditch, and he'd seen that the film was on at the Windrush Caribbean Film Festival. And then I think he messaged Brian about it. And then Brian thought, oh yeah, I'd like to see the film. And then I got a message from Nigel Camacho, who's, as I said, one of the Trinity Posse Group co-founders and a close friend of Brian's, actually Brian's dentist. And Nigel messaged me on WhatsApp and said, hey Sam, how's it going? Brian would like your number, I was like, wow, okay, that's really, really exciting. Yeah, you can have, please pass on my number and send my best regards to say hi to Brian for me.
You should have said no. So you sent on the number.
Yeah, I sent the number. And then like literally a few days later, on a Thursday afternoon, I was at David Lloyd Leisure Tennis Club. I think I played a bit of tennis in the morning. I was doing a bit of work in the afternoon, and phone number, a Trini, I could see it was a Trini number come up. I was like, this is him. This is going to be Brock. This is the man. and then you kind of hear that kind of sultry, kind of smooth voice. And it's like, hi, is that Sam? It's like, yeah, hi, is that Brian? And then it sort of penny dropped. This is Brian Lara. He's called me. I'm going to read, it's probably 10-12 minute phone conversation, just catching up. He obviously been coaching in the IPL with Sunrisers Hyderabad, so I asked him a bit about that. Asked him about what he was up to, and he said he was kind of coming over to the UK. He had a few different commitments. I think he was playing charity cricket tournament. He had a dinner that he needed to go to, but he was really keen to see the film, and that blew me away. That was incredible. And he actually kind of changed some of the dinner plans that he had. I think he kind of modified those a bit so he could come to Shoreditch and see the film. And it was just a really beautiful evening. And Lawrence had arranged a number of Brian's friends to come along, and we kind of took over the bar. It was a Monday night, end of June, and the guys at Windrush Caribbean Film Festival were really supportive as well. I should big up those guys for their support on the night with everything. And yeah, just to see him there, I have to pinch myself to be honest that it actually happened. After all these years, for him to kind of come and see it and to enjoy it just means the world to me. Absolute world to me. And the fact that he took part in the Q&A, and then he got mobbed, like you say, he got absolutely mobbed.
Literally, he got mobbed.
Yeah, and he was very generous with his time, speaking to everyone and posing, did loads of photographs, and he actually signed me a cricket bat, and it's got this lovely message. I don't know if you can see it, but
there it is. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, so that meant the world to me. I've got that forever now. So yeah, dream stuff. When I set out on the journey back in 2017 when I started making the film, I never in a million years would have thought we'd have got to that moment in Shoreditch. So yeah, I'm eternally grateful to Lawrence and obviously Brian for coming, and Gladstone and everyone that made the Windrush Caribbean Film Festival, everyone that made that night so special. And you came along, Mac, as well. It was great to see you there. Thank you for the photos that you took and the video clips. That was much appreciated. So yeah, it's great memories. Wasn't the first time I'd met Brian. But I'm not gonna go into any more detail on that. I'll leave that as a cliffhanger for people. Hopefully they can come along to the Electric Cinema on 12th of August.
I'll just end therefore, and it's anywhere near what Sam has just said about getting Brian along, but I think I should tell this story just as the final kind of pitch to people to try and get along to Birmingham on the 12th if you can, and if not, follow all the different handles that Sam gave, because there will be more and more information coming out over the coming months, years, about how to catch this film, etc. But on the day when we were leaving the cinema, I bumped into a gentleman. I apologize. I should have looked this up beforehand because it's only just occurred to me. I want to say his name was Gary. And if it isn't Gary, the gentleman who it was, I'm so sorry for getting it wrong. But anyway, Sam, I bumped into a gentleman outside down the stairs, and he was with his dad. And he said, this sounds like I'm bigging up CCP, but it's actually to big you up, Sam. And he said, he said something like MASH. And I said, oh, hi. Didn't know who it was. And he was like, I follow the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, etc. And he was like, thanks for putting out the tweet about the film today. I would never have gone if you hadn't put the tweet out. And I told my dad, and I said, I'm going to take you tonight. I think it was his dad's birthday. And he was like, that film was absolutely amazing. So people who are listening, this isn't about bigging up CCP. It's more for me to make the point to you that this gentleman who I met and his father were absolutely blown away by the film. And that was only purely because Sam had reached out to me to let me know it was happening. I said to Sam, I'm going to retweet this to make sure that people know that it's happening. And individuals who I met on that day, from Daniel Bell Drummond to this gentleman and his dad, were like, that was brilliant. So people, please, if you've got the time on the 12th, go along, go watch it. And like I say, if you haven't, follow all the different apps. The apps will be in the description below for those of you watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to it on the audios, all the apps will be in the description below as well. And go and follow Sam, the 501 Not Outs, etc., to get more and more information about how to catch this film, because it's one you will definitely want to watch. Sam, I'll leave the final words to you.
Just want to say thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been great to chat. Really enjoyed Yeah, we could have chatted, like you said, we could have chatted for a few more hours, I'm sure. Lovely to see you in London as well. Thank you so much for your support to come and see the film in Shoreditch at the Windrush Caribbean Film Festival. And just want to say to all your listeners, come and see the film, and I hope you enjoy it. It's a real kind of heartfelt, I would say it's a love letter really to Brian Lara, an ode to Brian Lara. If my 12-year-old self kind of knew what was going to go on and transpire, be amazing to kind of for me to go back in time and speak to my 12-year-old self and say, well, you're going to make this film about your childhood hero, and this is what's going to happen, and he's going to come and see the film in London, and it's just blow you away, blow me away. I just want people to see the film now. I just want to share it. I just want to share it with people, and I feel that Brian's, his achievements, his legacy, him as a person, more than anything, his humility, his generosity, his good humor. He's just a really nice, normal bloke, basically, that likes to drink, likes to drink, likes to party, likes to lime, and obviously loves his cricket, loves his golf too, by the way. But just a really, really nice bloke, basically, and I can genuinely say that from the bottom of my heart, So I just want as many people as possible around the world to enjoy, celebrate his genius, really. I think that's it.
Listen, ladies and gents, that's been Sam Lockyer, director, producer of 501 Not Out. I won't do any last pitch. I think we've done enough. I think you know where we're coming from. If I am saying that this is 1000% a film you need to watch, I wouldn't say that about any film, about just any old film about West Indies cricket. This is a must watch, people. And like I say, if you love Brian Lara, and even if you don't love Brian Lara, but you love West Indies cricket and you want to kind of embrace any kind of content around West Indies cricket, this film is a really good place to start. So get involved, people. We've given you all the acts. Go and follow. I want to see by this time next week, when I speak to Sam, I want him to tell me that he's had about 1,000 extra followers since this episode drops. So go follow, people. Go do what you need to do, and make sure if you're around and you can, get to Birmingham on the 12th of August. That's been Sam Lockyer. I've been Machel St. Patrick here at one half the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you as ever for listening. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rules seem coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.